welcome to the debate.
Welcome.
Today, we are dragging something into the light that, frankly, most of us spend our entire lives trying to ignore. It is a concept that threatens your ego, your sense of justice, and really the very foundation of how you judge the people around you.
It really is.
The central question we are tackling today is this: are you actually responsible for who you are and how you act? Or are we all merely a biological machine, playing out a script written by our genetics and our environment?
It's the ultimate terrifying question, isn't it? Because if we answer no, if we decide that we aren't the captains of our own ships, then the whole structure of society starts to wobble. I mean, if you aren't responsible for your failures, well, you also aren't responsible for your successes. And I don't know about you, but I'm not quite ready to hand over my trophies to mere luck just yet.
And that fear, that reluctance, is exactly where we need to start. I am taking the position today that individual agency, free will, as we colloquially know it, is a necessary illusion. We are quite literally a pool of genetics interacting with an environment. Every decision you make, every choice you think is yours, is really just a reaction to data inputs that you didn't choose.
And I am going to push back on that. Hard. I am taking the position that, while I'll absolutely admit we don't choose our parents or our zip code, human agency lives in the margins. It's that spark where two people face the exact same tragedy, and one collapses while the other builds something new. If we embrace your entirely deterministic view, we strip people of the dignity of that struggle. We just turn everyone into victims.
Well, victims is a loaded word. I prefer products. But let's look at why you feel that resistance, that need to protect the idea of the struggle. There's a psychological concept called the just world bias.
Right. The need for things to be fair.
Exactly. It's a psychological defect we all share. We have this desperate need to believe the world is fundamentally fair, that people deserve their circumstances. So when we see a billionaire, we invent a story about their superior work ethic. And when we see a homeless person, we invent a story about their laziness.
But is it always an invention? Come on, we have eyes. We see people who make bad choices every day. We see the guy who plays video games for 10 hours a day versus the guy who is out there learning a trade. You can't tell me those are the exact same mechanism at work. One is, working smart, the other is just drifting. That is a choice.
Is it though? You use the phrase working smart. Let's dig into that, because I think working smart is probably the biggest lie we tell ourselves to feel superior.
How is it a lie? Working smart just means you don't bang your head against the wall. You look for a lever. You Google the solution. You find a better way. That isn't genetic. That is a habit of mind.
But where does that habit come from? Let's consider the OBS analogy. For those unfamiliar, OBS is just broadcasting software used for streaming. The specific tool doesn't really matter. What matters is the user. Imagine a guy trying to record a video and he needs to split the audio tracks. He struggles for weeks, ruining recordings, doing it the absolute hardest way possible.
Right, so he's working hard but not smart.
Exactly. Then you have the genius. The genius walks in, clicks 2 buttons, and fixes it instantly. We look at him and say, wow, he's smart. He figured it out. But what actually happened? The genius likely just Googled how to split audio tracks in OBS.
Which perfectly proves my point. The genius took the initiative to ask the question. The struggler just sat there accepting his frustrating fate.
But here is the catch, and this is the part that shatters the whole initiative argument. To Google how to split audio tracks, you have to know that splitting audio tracks is a thing that is possible. You need the vocabulary. You need to know the concept even exists.
You really think the difference between success and failure is just, knowing a few words?
It is the concept of the unknown unknown. If your environment never taught you that audio can be split, you will never look for the button. You aren't lazy, you are blind. The genius in this scenario is just someone whose environment handed them the map to the search bar. Think about IT professionals. They aren't magicians. They just know the terminology to type into a search engine. Whereas a layperson looking at a broken screen doesn't even have the words to describe the problem.
I think you're completely stripping away human curiosity. We don't just search for what we already know. We search for solutions to pain. If my audio is bad, I look up how to fix bad audio. I don't need the highly specific technical term to have the fundamental drive to fix a problem.
But even the drive to fix it implies you believe a fix exists in the first place. Let me give you a weirder example. Why aren't you currently trying to turn hand sanitizer into gold?
Because that's impossible. It's alchemy. It's nonsense.
Exactly. Your environment, your understanding of physics, chemistry, society has told you it is impossible. So you don't try. You are, quote unquote, lazy in the pursuit of sanitizer gold. You are showing zero initiative.
Okay, that is ridiculous.
It feels ridiculous to us, but it's the exact same mechanism. If you grew up in a house where your uncle turned gel into gold bullion every Friday, you would be on Google right now typing sanitizer gold recipe. You'd be the hardest worker in the room. We only search for what our environment suggests is a fruitful path. If your environment tells you people like us don't go to college, you don't Google scholarships. You don't even know to look.
I see the logic, but I refuse to believe we are that programmable. You're describing a robot that only executes code if it's been uploaded previously. Humans have imagination. We can dream of things we haven't seen.
Can we? Or do we just remix the things we have seen?
Let's ground this a bit. We aren't talking about medieval alchemy or broadcasting software. We are talking about basic human survival. This is where I struggle with your view the most. Let's take the homeless individual scenario.
The man sitting outside the cafe.
Right. He is sitting on the sidewalk, and let's say right next to him in the cafe window is a help wanted sign. It's bright neon. It says, "Jobs available, inquire within."
A classic scenario, yes.
In this scenario, the solution to his problem is objectively physically present. It is inches away. It requires no Google search. It requires no specialized IT vocabulary. It just requires the simple will to stand up, open the door, and ask. If he doesn't do it, how can you possibly say that isn't a failure of personal agency?
Because you are assuming he sees that sign the exact same way you do. You see an opportunity. He sees a trap.
It's a sign. It's not a Rorschach test. It plainly says help wanted.
Let's use the window analogy. And I want you to really visualize this. If we were on the 10th floor of a building right now, and I opened the window and told you, jump, you can fly, would you do it?
Of course not.
Why?
Because I die. It's suicide.
You are absolutely certain of that. Your entire life, every lesson in physics you've ever had, every time you've tripped and scraped your knee has given you a massive, undeniable data set that says gravity hurts, falling equals death. So your refusal to jump isn't you being lazy or lacking initiative. It is a highly rational preservation of life based on your environmental data.
Okay, but applying for a job at a cafe isn't jumping out a 10-story window.
To him, it might be. Imagine a man who has been rejected 10,000 times. Maybe he was heavily abused by authority figures. Maybe every single time he tried to better himself, he was mocked or beaten down or exploited. His data set screams effort equals pain. His internal physics tells him that walking through that door will only result in humiliation, not a paycheck.
So you're saying he looks at a mundane job application with the same visceral life or death fear I would have standing on a ledge?
Yes. To him, the help wanted sign is a lie. His inaction is a completely rational response to his reality. We stand on the street corner, arrogant and comfortable in our successful lives, yelling, just jump, it's easy, because our data set says we can fly. We judge him for staying on the ground, but he is just trying not to die.
That is incredibly bleak.
Reality often is.
But if we accept that his past trauma makes his inaction rational, then we are basically condemning him to rot on that sidewalk. If we tell him it's okay, you can't help it, your data says don't try, then he never tries, and he dies there.
He might.
See, I can't accept that. That is a philosophy of total despair. I have to believe that he can override the data. I have to believe he can say, screw the past, and open the door anyway. That is what being human is. It's defying the data.
And I love that story. We all do. It's very cinematic. But when someone does defy the data, when someone miraculously breaks the cycle, is it magic or is it just a variable we didn't see?
Ah, here we go, the hidden variable.
It's a truth. Maybe the guy who finally stands up has slightly different brain chemistry, a little more baseline dopamine, a little less cortisol. Maybe he had a grandmother who smiled at him once in 1998, and that one positive data point was just enough to tip the scale decades later. He didn't choose that grandmother. He didn't choose his serotonin levels. He just got lucky.
You attribute everything to luck. It acts like a universal acid in your worldview. It just dissolves everything: pride, shame, effort, merit.
It dissolves the ego. And that brings us to the most dangerous part of this conversation, I think: justice.
Yes, this is where the rubber meets the road. Because if we follow your logic all the way to the end, the prisons should be empty.
Not empty, just different.
Look, if I am not responsible for my working smart, then the serial killer isn't responsible for his violence. He's just a pool of genetics and a bad environment, right? So how can we punish him? How can we look a victim's mother in the eye and say, well, he didn't mean it, he's just a broken machine?
You are confusing punishment with prevention, and this is a crucial distinction. In a deterministic world, we do not punish for revenge. We prevent outcomes.
That sounds very sterile. Outcome prevention.
It is intensely practical. If a serial killer is loose, we must catch him, we must lock him up, we must separate him from society because he is highly dangerous. But, and this is the hard part for people to swallow, we don't need to hate him.
You don't hate a serial killer?
Do you hate a hurricane?
A hurricane doesn't have a brain. It doesn't make a choice to destroy a town.
A hurricane follows the rigid laws of physics. It destroys your house because temperature and pressure dictated that it simply must. The killer follows the laws of neurobiology. He destroys a life because his brain structure, his genetics, and his horribly abusive childhood dictated he must. Hating him is satisfying, sure, but it is deeply irrational. It is literally like screaming at a tornado.
But the anger has a social purpose. It signals that a profound moral line was crossed. If we treat a murderer like a broken toaster that just needs to be put in a storage closet, we lose the moral weight of the act. We lose the ability to say, this is evil.
We lose the word evil, yes, but we gain the word solution. As long as we settle for calling a criminal evil, we stop looking for the cause. We just say, oh, he was a bad seed, and we move on. But if we say, he was a machine produced by this specific toxic environment, maybe we actually start fixing the environment. Maybe we get the lead out of the local water supply. Maybe we properly fund early childhood intervention. Blame makes us feel good. Understanding actually stops the next murder.
That is the Steelman argument for your side, I'll admit. That determinism moves us from pure judgment to actual problem solving. I get that. But I worry about the daily cost of this mindset. I worry about what happens to the average person, not the killer, not the homeless man on the brink, but the guy just trying to raise a family.
What about him?
The parenting paradox. If you have kids, you know this struggle. Do you look your child in the eye and say, listen, don't worry about studying too hard. Your genetics and the zip code I bought this house in have already determined your SAT score?
Well, no. Obviously, you don't say that.
Exactly. You tell them you can do anything if you try hard enough. You lie to them.
We do.
So you admit it. You admit that the illusion of agency is functionally necessary for a human being to operate in the world.
It is necessary for comfort and maybe for motivation. But just because a lie is useful doesn't make it fundamentally true. We tell our kids they can be astronauts. Statistically, they will be mid-level managers. We tell them that to protect them from the crushing weight of reality. And here is the twist you're missing. Our belief in them becomes a new environmental variable.
A variable.
Yes. If I tell my kid, you are smart, you can figure this out, that is a new data input. It changes their internal data set. It might give them the precise confidence required to Google the solution later in life. So the lie actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's still just an environmental input.
So we are creators. We create the environment for each other.
We are conduits. I pass the data I receive from my environment to my child. I am not generating it from the void through sheer will. I am just a relay station.
You have an answer for everything. It's a perfectly closed loop. You've trapped us in a clockwork universe.
It only feels like a trap because you desperately want to be the hero of the story. You want to be the self-made man.
I do. And I think that desire is healthy. There's an analogy in the material about a desert. I think it perfectly captures the core of our disagreement today.
The success is staying put analogy.
Right. The idea is this. You are lost in a desert. You don't have a map. There are 4 directions. 3 lead to certain death. 1 leads to water. The argument is that if you don't know the way, the smart move, the rational, data-driven move, is to sit still.
Because random movement is a fool's errand. If you have a 75% chance of walking into dehydration and death, you preserve your calories, you wait for a variable to change.
And that is exactly what the victim mentality does. It waits. I don't know what to do. My environment hasn't shown me, so I'll do nothing. But here is my counter. If you sit in the desert, you die anyway.
True, eventually.
To pick a direction and walk, even if you have zero evidence it's the right one. To defy the odds. That is what I am advocating for. The help wanted sign might be a trap, or it might be salvation. You cannot know until you take the terrifying step of walking through the door.
But you will only walk through that door if you are already the kind of a person who takes risks, which predictably brings us back to
Don't say it.
genetics.
We are going in circles, but maybe that's the point of this material.
I think the real point here is empathy. If I look at you and say, you are a product of incredible luck, I can't envy you. If I look at the criminal and say, you are a product of terrible luck, I can't hate him. I can only try to fix the machine that builds us.
And if I look at myself and say I am responsible, maybe I work a little harder to fix that machine myself rather than waiting for the environment to do it for me.
Perhaps.
We have covered a lot of ground today, from OBS software to alchemy to the justice system, and I think we've left everyone listening with a pretty massive headache.
A good headache, I hope. The kind that comes from stretching a philosophical muscle you didn't know you had.
Before we go, I want to issue a challenge. Not from the material, but from me.
Go ahead.
There is a help wanted sign in your life right now. Maybe it's an actual job. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you need to have. Maybe it's a bad habit you need to break. The advocate here says you will only act on it if your programming allows. He says your fear of the unknown is completely rational.
Because it is.
I say, prove the programming wrong. Treat the fear as a lie. Walk through the door anyway. Be the variable that changes your own equation.
It is a beautiful thought. And if you actually do it well, maybe you were just lucky enough to have this debate as your new environmental input today.
I'll gladly take the credit for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Debate.
Until next time.